Now, when it comes to retirement planning, this is not really something you're thinking about in your 20s or 30s. In your 20s, you're just getting your career started and perhaps are trying to get enough money together for a house deposit. In your 30s, you're probably on the property ladder. You might be looking to have a child, and that is your main focus when it comes to your finances. But what happens when you hit 40? All of a sudden, you realise you're halfway through your career and you've not even given a second thought to retirement or pensions. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly how much you need to be saving if you are starting retirement planning in your 40s. Not only looking at how much you actually need to have saved by the time you retire, but also how much you need to be saving monthly. Because for most people, this is the figure that they actually care about, not necessarily the figure they're wanting to aim for in 20 to 25 years' time. I'll be discussing the values you need both as a couple and as a single person, and I'll also be looking at A, how much difference it makes as to when you retire, and B, how much of a difference it makes in terms of the actual returns you're getting on your pension. But if you're new here, my name's Ben, I'm a chartered financial planner, and my aim is to help as many people as possible gain more clarity and confidence around their pensions, retirement planning, and personal finances. Okay, so before we actually unpack how much you need to have saved and how much you need to be saving on a regular basis, it's first important to actually understand how much income you're likely to need when it comes to retirement. So on screen now, I've put some figures from the retirement living standards. And this shows you the difference in terms of a minimum level of income when it comes to retirement, a moderate level of income, and a comfortable level of income. It's important to note at this point that these are the spend figures, so these are the net of tax figures. Now, the retirement living standards actually give the annual amounts, but quite frankly, I don't think this is massively useful because for most people, you're used to getting your income on a monthly basis. So on the bottom, I've put what these are broken down to from a monthly perspective. Now, for the purposes of the video, I'm going to be focusing on the moderate lifestyle when it comes to retirement. So you'll see that for a single person, this is about £2,600 a month. And for a couple, this is about £3,700 a month. Okay, so let's start at looking at a couple who are aiming to retire at the state pension age, which for them is going to be age 68. So you can see that for that £3,700 a month, that equates to about £44,400 a year in spending. Now, for most people, they're going to have the full state pension when it comes to state pension age. So for a couple, this is going to provide about £12,500 a year each, or £25,000 between them. This means, therefore, that you need to fund the remaining £19,400 through a combination of both of your pensions. Now, on screen, you can see a breakdown of how your expenses might be funded if you were to retire at the age of 68. So you can see here we've taken effectively a timeline from age 68 all the way up to age 90. Now, clearly no one knows how long they're going to live, but as financial planners, when we're looking at retirement planning and putting plans in place for our clients, we typically assume that most people are going to live to the age of 90. So you can see here that you've got both your state pensions in payment, which is covering just over half of your expenses. And then you can see the red part, which is a shortfall. And that's the section that we're focusing on in this video, is how do we actually make that shortfall disappear? Effectively, what do we need to do in order to ensure that your expenses can be met from age 68 to age 90? Now, when it comes to retirement planning, there are a multitude of options in terms of how you actually take money from your pension when it comes to retirement. But the two main ones are flexi access drawdown or purchasing an annuity. And you can see on screen now, I've shown you how each works in practice. So with flexi access drawdown, your pension remains invested when you come to retire, and you can effectively draw as much or as little as you want each year. So effectively using it as a bank account. Now, when it comes to the tax or no withdrawals, you get 25% of that withdrawal tax-free, which is what most people see as the tax-free cash allowance. And the remaining 75% is taxable. Now, the amount of tax you pay on that withdrawal is going to be dependent on your other income in retirement, but for most people, it's going to be at 20%. With an annuity, you effectively hand over your pension pot to an annuity provider, and they will then pay you a guaranteed income each year for the rest of your life. Now, there are pros and cons to both of these approaches, and I've actually done a video on this. So what I would suggest you do is, before going any further, actually going and looking at this video so you can actually understand the benefits and drawbacks of each option. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume you're using flexi access drawdown when it comes to retirement. Now, typically when we are looking at flexi access drawdown, we use something called a safe withdrawal rate. And effectively what this means is how much as a percentage can you take from your pension each year to ensure it is sustainable for the duration of your retirement. Now the figure can range from anywhere between 3 to 5%, but again, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume a safe withdrawal rate of 4.5%. So based on that, and you needing to fund that £19,400 a year shortfall, you're going to need a pension pot between the two of you of about £430,000. Now clearly this is in today's terms, and the actual amount in 28 years when you reach age 68 will be higher. But just to give you some context around how much you actually need to aim for, that figure, as I say, is £430,000. Now again, one of the key variables when it comes to retirement planning is the return you're getting on your pension. And again, this can vary from year to year depending on how much risk you're taking. But typically you would expect a return of about 5% a year on average. So we're using that figure for the purposes of the video. So you can see that based on that assumed 5% average return each year on your pension after inflation, you would need to save between the two of you about £600 a month from age 40 to age 68 to be on track to actually hit that £430,000 target. Okay, so that's for a couple, but how about for an individual? Because clearly if you are in a position where you're retiring alone, there is going to be a big difference in how much you need to save. A, because the amount you actually need to spend is going to be different, but B, you've only got one state pension rather than two. So let's look at how that actually impacts on the pension pot you need to be aiming for, and therefore the amount you need to be saving each month. And you can see that for an individual, based on that £2,600 a month of a moderate level of lifestyle, or £31,200 a year, your state pension is going to cover £12,500 of that, and therefore you need to fund the remaining £18,700 yourself. And again, you can see on screen the breakdown of this. So if we go back to the previous example in a couple, you could see that the state pensions were covering over half of the expenses, whereas for an individual, that is actually going to be covering just over a third. So in short, you've got a much bigger shortfall as a percentage to actually bridge that gap between the state pension and the actual income you need to fund your expenses. And again, using that same 4.5% safe withdrawal rate, you're going to need to aim for a pension pot of about £415,000. Now you'll see straight away here, there's a very little difference between the amount you need for a couple and for an individual. So that's £430,000 versus £415,000. And this actually shows you the massive impact having two state pensions can have. Because clearly, in a position where you've only got one state pension, although your expenses are reduced, you still need a pension pot size pretty much the same size as a couple just to meet your expenses. And as a result of that, the amount you need to be saving each month is actually not that much lower either. So instead of £600 a month between the two of you in the couple example, so on average £300 a month, you need to be saving £580 a month. So you can see here that retiring on your own versus in a couple means you've got to be saving a lot more on your own than you would be if you were in a couple. Okay, so what about if you want to retire before state pension age? Because for a lot of people, working to age 68 simply isn't something they want to do. So if you are aiming to retire, let's say at age 60, how does that impact on how much you need to be saving, both on a regular basis and the pension pot size you need in order to do that? So again, I've put on screen a cash flow of your retirement from age 60 to age 90. Now, the biggest thing you'll see straight away compared to the previous examples is that 7-year gap between age 60 and state pension age. And you can see for those 7 years, you have no income from your state pension. And as a result, you need to be funding your expenses entirely off your own back. So let's actually look at how much difference that makes, because clearly having 7 years of no state pension puts a massive burden on how much you need to be saving in order to actually fund those expenses yourself. So again, using that £430,000 figure from before as a couple, that still stands because that's going to cover effectively your expenses once the state pension comes in. But as I've said, we've got a 7-year gap there of needing to fund £44,400 a year. Now clearly during those 7 years, you are going to get returns on your pension. So this is kind of a rough figure, but it just gives you an idea of how much you would need to be saving in your pension pot in order to retire at age 60. So you can see here that we've got the 7 years, we've got the expenses of £44,400 a year, which means that to fund those 7 years of expenses, you're going to need just over £310,000 in your pension. We then add that to the £430,000 to cover your expenses from age 68, which means that to retire at age 60, you will need a pension pot between the two of you of about £740,000. Okay, so let's now break that down into how much you need to be saving each month from age 40 to age 60. And you can see here that, again, based on that 5% average return, between the two of you, you would need to be saving about £1,800 a month. Now, the key thing when you're looking at these figures is that £1,800 a month, for example, includes any pension contributions that your employer is making into your workplace pension. So let's say, for example, that between the two of you, each of your employers are contributing £300 a month into your pension. So again, between the two of you, that's £600 a month into your pensions. That means that between the two of you, you've only got to be saving £1,200 a month rather than £1,800 a month. Okay, let's now look at an individual situation where, again, they're trying to retire at age 60. And again, you can see on screen here, I've mapped out from age 60 to age 90. And again, as before, we've got that 7-year gap where you've got no income from the state pension. So how much do we actually need to be saving into your pension and the pension pot size required to ensure you can actually meet your expenses from age 60? So again, we've still got the same £415,000 to cover the expenses from age 68. But in addition to that, we need to be saving 7 years worth of that £31,200 a month of expense, which is just over £218,000. If we then add that to the £415,000, that means that to retire at age 60 with a moderate level of income when it comes to retirement, you're going to need a pension pot size of about £633,000. And again, using that average return each year, you're going to need to save about £1,600 a month. And as I said before, that includes any pension contributions from your employer. So again, if your employer is contributing £300 a month into your pension, you only need to be saving £1,300 a month. Okay, so you can see there the massive difference it makes in terms of when you retire. But another key variable that can make a huge difference in terms of the amount you need to be saving is the actual return you're getting on your pension. So again, on screen now, I've shown the impact of this. So let's take age 60, for example. If you're looking to retire as a couple, with a 5% return, you need to be saving that £1,800 a month we went through. However, you can see that if you only get a 3% average return on your pensions, that £1,800 a month goes up to £2,300 a month. Conversely, if you get a 7% return on your investment, you need to be saving £1,500 a month rather than that £1,800 a month. This is why it's really important to actually look at your pension and understand what your pension is invested in, because as you can see there, it can make a massive difference in terms of how much you need to be saving. Because clearly, if you're getting a higher return over the course of your working life to retirement, the amount you need to save is less, because that investment growth is actually doing a lot more of the heavy lifting for you than it would be if you were getting a lower return on your investment. Okay, so what actions can you take away from this video? Now, clearly, all these figures have been based on you having no pension at age 40. However, for most people, they are likely to have some sort of pension from their working life. So what I would suggest you do is check out the pensions tracing service, because the chances are you might have some old pensions from 15 or 20 years ago from your old employers, but you may not actually know where they are. So log on to here, you can actually go and find out where your old pensions are, because this can make a massive difference in terms of how much you need to be saving. Because even if you've got an old pension, let's say it's £10,000 or £15,000, that is going to make a difference in terms of how much you need to be saving on a regular basis to retire when you want to. The next step is to talk to your HR department and actually see how much your employer is contributing into your pension as it stands. The other thing you want to be looking at is, do they offer maximum matching pension contributions? And simply what this means is that some employers will actually say, we will increase our contribution if you increase yours. So again, this can make a big difference, because the more of the heavy lifting that your employer is doing in terms of contributions, the less you've actually could be putting in. So again, this can be a big lever to pull when you are looking at retirement planning. And the final step is to actually look at what your pension's invested in. So once you've found your old pensions, really look at what they're invested in to see what the returns on those have been. Now, clearly there are so many options when it comes to what you're investing within your pensions, and that's far beyond the scope of this video. But what you want to be doing is actually looking at how your pension's invested. Now, over the long term, and by that I mean 15, 20 years, effectively, the more risk you're taking, the chances are the more return you're going to get over the long term. So looking at that and actually seeing, is that aligned with my level of risk that I want to take? And what impact is that going to have on the amount I need to save between now and retirement? Now, as I've said, all the figures in this video are based on you having no pension at age 40 and starting at that age in terms of retirement planning. But clearly everyone's scenario is different. So what I would suggest you do is check out my free retirement calculator, and you can find a link to this in the description below. And what this allows you to do is you can go in and put your own details in. So your current age, what your earnings are, how much you're saving into your pension, and the sort of level of income you want when it comes to retirement. And this will show you if you are on track to actually hit that figure or not. Now, if you're off track, it then gives you a few different options around what you can do to ensure you are on track to actually retire when you want with the income you want. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, got some value from it. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this in the future, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.